She brought a handmade gift to the baby, shower stitched with care, passed down through generations. They laughed at it, mocked it in front of everyone. No one stopped them, not even her son. But what they didn't expect was what she'd do. Next, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't defend herself. She simply took the baby and left. What followed wasn't chaos. It was quiet, steady, and undeniable. If you've ever been cast aside by your own family or watched your love be dismissed as outdated, this story will stay with you. Because sometimes the most powerful answer isn't revenge, it's presence. It came on a Wednesday afternoon, tucked between a flyer for roofing services and a pre-approved credit card offer. The envelope was thin, off-white, the kind that bends too easily in the mailbox. Her name was printed, not handwritten, and the return address was just the venue, not a home. She turned it over once, then again, then slid a finger under the flap and opened it slowly. Inside was a single card, glossy, floral border. "Join us for a celebration," it said in pink script, the kind you see on print-rown templates. Her daughter-in-law's name was listed first. Then her son's in smaller type. Below that, the time and date. A baby shower. Saturday, midday. No RSVP line. No note scribbled in the corner. It's just instructions. Bring a gift from the registry. Light snacks provided. She sat down at the kitchen table and stared at it for a while. The card looked untouched, like it had been mailed from a spreadsheet. No fingerprints, no creases. Just intention at a distance. She hadn't expected to be invited. They hadn't spoken much, not since the engagement. Not since the day her son called and said she just doesn't connect with you the same way. It had stung, but she had said nothing. She had smiled when they visited. She had complimented the nursery paint color in the photo. She had mailed birthday cards even when they went unacknowledged. She had sent a casserole when her daughter-in-law caught the flu. Never a thank you, not even a text. But still, she sent it. Now the card. She turned it face down and reached for her tea. The sun outside was warm across the windowsill. Her mug left a small ring on the table, barely visible but persistent. She traced it with one finger, not thinking about the party yet. Just about what it meant to be invited late. After the real plans had already been made. After the list had already been approved, she could say no. No one would blame her. It was an hour's drive. Her name wasn't on the group text. She'd have to find something to wear that didn't look like she was trying too hard. She'd have to smile at people who barely looked up from their phones. But she also remembered what it felt like not to be there. She remembered her own mother not showing up when her first son was born. Too tired, too busy, too far. The absence, louder than any presence could have been. And she had sworn back then that she would always show up, even when she wasn't wanted, even when the invitation came like an afterthought. So she circled the date on the calendar. In pen, the gift came next. She didn't bother with the registry. She looked through the items of coarse diaper warmers, silicone bottles, a smart bassinet that cost more than her mortgage payment. But nothing felt like her, like something she could give without feeling like a stranger. Instead, she walked into the hall closet and pulled down the storage bin with the old linens. Inside was a bundle wrapped in tissue, cream fabric with soft blue edges. A wrap she had made decades ago. Her son's initials stitched faintly in the corner, almost worn to nothing from use. She washed it carefully, line-dried it, ironed the edges, and began to rework the stitching, adding new initials, new warmth. Her fingers moved slowly, not from age, but from care. A kind of quiet love that didn't need to announce itself. She boxed it in white tissue, tied it with a cotton ribbon, and tucked a small note inside. Not long, just a few lines. Then she placed it by the door, ready for Saturday. She didn't expect it to be anyone's favorite gift. She didn't expect to be thanked. But she would be there because family, even when it forgot how to include you, still mattered. And sometimes you go not because you're invited, but because you remember what it means to show up the morning. Of the shower arrived with a sky so still it felt like the world was holding its breath. She woke early, not out of excitement, but out of habit. Years of preparing for other people's days had taught her to rise before the rush. The house was quiet. The water boiled slowly. She poured her tea and let it steep longer than usual, watching the steam swirl against the window as the neighborhood stretched itself awake. The gift sat on the entry table, just where she'd left it, still wrapped, still silent. The soft cotton ribbon hadn't shifted, the corners of the box still, crisp. She brushed her hand lightly over the top, as if to calm it. Then she got dressed. She didn't choose anything flashy. It's just a simple navy blouse, pressed slacks, and the silver pendant she used to wear when her son was small. It wasn't a statement piece, but it carried memory. And today, that felt like enough. The drive was longer than she remembered. Not in distance, but in quiet. The roads had changed. The town had filled in where old fields used to be. She passed a coffee shop she didn't recognize. A mural on the side of a new daycare. Somewhere in the distance, the past felt like it had been quietly replaced. She found the venue with little troublous suburban homes set in a development where all the houses looked related. The kind of place with coordinated shutters and curved driveways. Balloons marked the mailbox, a pale cluster of blush and cream. Bobbing gently in the wind, her hands hesitated on the steering wheel once she parked. She could still leave. She could text a polite excuse. But she had come this far. The gift was still in the passenger seat, the note nestled inside. She exhaled quietly, opened the door, and stepped out. The front door was already ajar. She could hear laughter, faint music, the sound of someone pouring punch into plastic cups. She rang the bell anyway. A young woman opened the door. Not one she knew. Likely a friend of her daughter-in-law. She was wearing a floral dress, holding a clipboard, and blinked once before saying, "Hi. Come on in. Gifts go on the table in the dining room." Then she turned and walked away without waiting. She stepped inside slowly. The house smelled like sugar and perfume. Streamers hung from the ceiling in loops. A table near the entry held name tags and a small sign that said, "Welcome, baby." In pink calligraphy. No one offered her a marker. No one asked her name. She moved to the dining room as instructed. The gift table was already crowded. Towering bags with printed animals. Boxes wrapped in metallic paper. Tissue paper exploding from the tops. She found a small space near the back and placed hers down gently. It looked plain in comparison. Unapologetically plain. But that was all right. Wasn't meant to compete. The living room held most of the guests. She recognized a few faces from photos her son had shared over the years, mostly younger, all circling in small clusters. The air was filled with compliments and comparison. Target has the best onesies right now. She registered for the bottle sterilizer and the drying rack, smart girl. I hope someone got the car seat insert. It's back-ordered everywhere. No one noticed her. She stood near the kitchen doorway, holding her cup of tea untouched. Her name hadn't been called out. No one waved her over. She didn't interrupt. Her son wasn't there yet. Or if he was, he hadn't said hello. She sipped once, out of politeness to herself. The tea was lukewarm. She didn't need a spotlight. She wasn't here for that. But even so, the quiet stung a little more than she had prepared for. She adjusted. Her pendant and weighted dot, she had brought a gift. She had done everything right, and still, she was just the woman standing alone near the doorway. Not angry, just not seen. It took a while for anyone to notice her. Long enough for 2 more guests to arrive for the punch bowl to be refilled. And for the volume of the room to rise in the way it does when people feel certain they're among friends. She remained near the edge, one hand resting lightly on the counter, her purse tucked neatly under her arm. She didn't fidget. She didn't pace. She simply waited for someone to see her, not out of pity, but out of recognition, eventually. Her daughter-in-law appeared. Surrounded 3 women flanked her. One adjusting the sash across her torso that read Mom to Be in gold lettering. Another balancing a cupcake stand, and a third fixing her hair while laughing too loud. She looked exactly as she had in photos, polished, prepared. Radiant in a way that had nothing to do with warmth. Her eyes scanned the room. Landed briefly on the corner where the gift table stood. And then, finally, on the kitchen doorway. There. Eyes met. It wasn't awkward exactly, but it wasn't warm either. "Oh, hi," the younger woman said, her smile practiced thin. "You made it." "I did," she replied, folding her hands politely. "Congratulations." "Thank you," her daughter-in-law answered, already looking past her. "We've got a few games starting soon. Feel free to join in. There's seating outside too if it gets too loud in here." She nodded once. Of course, no hug. Number. Touch. No one offered to take her coat. She hadn't worn one, but still. The absence of gesture was louder than it needed to be. The crowd around the mother-to-be shifted, pulling her away again. Her voice trailed off mid-sentence as someone asked about registry gifts. She didn't look back, so she turned and walked slowly toward the back patio. Just for air. Just for a breath that wasn't filled with sugar and hairspray outside. The air was crisper, quieter. A small seating area had been arranged, folding chairs, some garden stools, a few mismatched cushions. She chose the furthest chair and sat, with her hands folded on her lap, her purse resting beside her. From here, she could still hear the laughter through the open glass doors, the clink of glasses, someone clapping over a game involving plastic baby bottles. She heard her name once, not called, just mentioned. "I think that's his mom over there." Not her name, not my mother-in-law, just a title, a reference point. She stayed where she was, not because she was sulking, but because there was no place else to be. The gift table was still visible from here. Hers was the smallest box. No shine. No bright bow. Just white tissue and soft ribbon. It sat near the edge. Now someone had moved it to make space for the larger bags. She wondered briefly if they had opened it yet. They would open it at all. She wasn't expecting praise or tears, but maybe, just maybe, a moment, a pause. The kind of silence that says someone noticed the care, even if they don't know the story behind it. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the balloons at the edge of the deck. She pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders and stared out across the trimmed lawn. She didn't come here to be center stage. She had no desire to compete with Pinterest spreads or registry lists. But she had come, and even if no one else, remembered that in the weeks to come she would. Because showing up, she had always believed, was its own kind of gift, even when no one knew how to receive it. It started slowly, the way these things always do. Someone called for attention, not loudly. Just a firm clap of hands near the dessert table, and the group began drifting toward the center of the living room. Chairs were pulled into a loose circle. Someone passed around blank bingo cards. Another placed a large pink sack on the floor, marked gifts. She lingered near the back, not yet seated, watching as voices grew louder. As the bride-to-be, her daughter Leonla, was guided to the largest chair with the best lighting. A decorative banner hung behind her. "Welcome, baby girl," H letter, stenciled in gold, strung between 2 windows that overlooked the patio. The sash across her chest had slipped slightly. Someone leaned in to fix it again. The tone in the room shifted to something rehearsed, the kind of enthusiasm people summon when there's a camera nearby or a chance to be remembered for being fun. Someone called out, "Let's start with the big one." And laughter followed as a tall gift bag with glittery handles was dragged into the center. A round of O's as pink tissue exploded out of the top. She took a step forward, thinking maybe now that the attention had shifted, she could take a seat along the wall, but the chairs were full, every last one. No one stood to offer a spot. No one noticed her standing, so she stayed near the back, hands folded, smile, polite, invisible, one by one. The gifts were unwrapped, matching onesies, a designer diaper bag. A gift card to an organic baby boutique. Someone had printed a custom blanket with the baby's name embroidered in looping cursive, or clapping, or laughter. Her gift was still near the end of the table. It's untouched. She watched her daughter-in-law's hands move quickly through tissue and ribbon, her voice chirping with practiced delight. "Oh my gosh, so cute. I was hoping someone would get this. This will look perfect in the nursery." It's the nursery she had never seen. It's the one she'd only heard about in snippets, filtered through phone calls her son made once a month. Out of duty, not habit. She shifted her weight slightly, adjusting the strap on her purse. One of the younger women noticed her nudge for a second and smiled politely before returning to her drink. Then, finally, someone called out, "There's one more. It's a smaller box. Plain white dot, no gift bag, no tag visible. It's just soft tissue. And a narrow cotton ribbon tied neatly at the center. It doesn't say who it's from." Someone said. Her daughter-in-law tilted her head, examining the box as though it might not belong. "Oh," she said lightly. "Maybe someone forgot to sign it." The ribbon was untied. The tissue unfolded, and then silence. It lasted only a breath, but it was enough. She held up the baby wrap, hand-stitched, cream-colored, soft-worn cotton with new embroidery, carefully worked into the hem. The room didn't react right away. Someone leaned closer. Another sipped from a plastic flute. Then the voice came sharp, playful, and too loud. "Ah, vintage." More laughter. A few chuckles. Her daughter-in-law smiled stiffly, held it up with 2 fingers. "Well," she said, pausing, "this is thoughtful," another woman whispered. "Did someone actually make that?" More laughter. "She's going to be such a rustic baby," someone added. Her son said nothing. He was standing in the hallway now, watching, phone in hand, not looking at her, not stepping in. The baby wrap was folded back into the box without care, set on the floor near the chair, not with the others, not placed somewhere it could be admired. Just set aside. The next gift was called for. Applause returned. Her hands stayed still, not clenched, not shaking, just still. She had not come for applause. She had not come for validation. But the laughter, that quiet laughter, meant for someone. Not in the room that was harder to walk away from. She turned toward the door. No one stopped her, not even her son. The hallway was narrow, dimmer than the rest of the house. She didn't walk quickly. There was no reason to rush. No one had followed her. No one had called out after her name. It's just the faint hum of conversation behind her and the lingering echo of laughter that hadn't quite belonged to Joy. She found herself in the kitchen again, alone this time. The cupcakes had been picked over, paper plates stacked haphazardly. A punch ring stained the edge of the counter. She rested one hand on the back of a chair, steadying herself. The kitchen was warm, a little too warm. Something about the oven still on, or maybe just the closeness of so many people in one house. She could hear them still behind the wall, celebrating. She didn't cry. Not yet. There was no sudden collapse, only a tightness around her chest, as if something inside had folded inward, silently, without anyone noticing. A photograph on the fridge caught her eye. It wasn't framed or even printed with quality. It's just a glossy 4x6 stuck with a magnet shaped like a watermelon slice. Her son, much younger, no more than 8, smear of cake across his cheek, one front tooth missing, arms flung around her neck. Her hair was darker then, her smile less rehearsed. She hadn't seen that photo in years, hadn't known they still had it. Her daughter-in-law had never mentioned it, never commented on it in the stories she told about what kind of man he's become. She reached out and straightened it slightly. The magnet had slipped. There was a shadow behind her. She turned slowly. It was a guest, not one she knew. The woman offered a polite smile, blinked at her awkwardly, and asked, "Do you know where the extra forks are?" She pointed toward the drawer near the sink. The woman thanked her and left. She stayed where she was, in the corner of the counter. Half covered by a napkin was the box she had brought, the one with the wrap. It had been moved here at some point, maybe by someone cleaning up the living room. Or maybe it had never made it back with the others. It looked out of place here, not quite discarded, but not remembered either. She reached for it, lifted the lid gently. The wrap was still folded, her stitches still intact, the note untouched. At the bottom of the tissue, she picked it up, slipped it back into her purse without hesitation, not out of spite, not out of anger, but because some things don't belong where they aren't wanted. She stepped to the back door, not the front. The sliding one that led to the side yard. It was unlocked. She slid it open slowly, careful not to draw attention, and stepped out into the light. The air felt different here, not cooler, but clearer. A breeze moved through the trees lining the fence. And for a moment, she just stood there, holding the purse against her chest. Listening to the wind dot inside, the celebration carried on. Someone clinked a glass. Another round of laughter. She took the wrap out of her bag, unfolded it slowly, and ran her hand across the stitching. The corners still soft, the fabric still warm with memory that, somewhere in the distance, a sound. Not laughter, not music. A soft cry. She turned toward it. And through the window she could see the bassinet in the corner of the living room. The baby, stirring unheld. She stood still, then slowly she stepped back inside. She didn't rush. The sliding door closed behind her with a gentle click, unnoticed by the voices in the other room. No one was watching, no one was asking. The party had grown louder, the kind of loud that masks everything quiet. Paper confetti scattered across the hardwood floor, the scent of frosting thick in the air. Someone had spilled a drink. No one had cleaned it up. The bassinet sat near the window, small soft frame, with quilted sides and a mobile that turned just slightly with the air from the vent above. The baby was awake now. Not crying, not quite fussing, just the faint, rhythmic stir of a child waiting for a presence. She stepped toward him carefully, silently. One hand resting on the edge, the way she used to. The way that never leaves your muscle memory, even when the years stack up. His eyes were barely open, lashes damp. He made a small sound, not of protest, but of recognition. A noise she remembered. A noise every baby makes when the room changes, and they are no longer alone. She glanced around. The laughter had shifted to the kitchen now. A new game, more shouting, more celebration. No one in the living room. No one near the window. No one near the child. She reached down, slipped one hand beneath the baby's shoulders, the other under his legs, lifted him slowly. He didn't cry, settled against her chest, cheek pressed to the fabric of her blouse. The wrap was still in her purse, folded carefully. She opened it now, looped it gently across her shoulder, securing him the way she had practiced years ago, back when her hands were younger. But no steadier than they were now. The weight of him against her was light, almost too light, as if the air itself was helping her hold him. She didn't look back toward the kitchen. She didn't wait for someone to notice. She simply walked toward the front door, her purse still on her shoulder, her hands wrapped around the small life in her arms. The door opened with a soft creak. The wind outside had shifted. A few balloons bobbed gently against the porch rail. She stepped onto the front step, then down onto the walkway. Still no one. Called out. No one asked. The car keys were already in her pocket. She had brought the car seat just in case. Not because she planned this, not because she knew, but because when you've raised a child, certain instincts never dull. Preparedness was not suspicion. 'Twas habit. She opened the back door of Canoe's, her car, set him gently inside, buckled the harness without fumbling, adjusted the strap so it didn't press against his cheek. He watched her the whole time, silent, trusting. She got in, closed the door, sat still for one moment longer, her hands resting on the wheel, through the windshield. The house stood quiet, festive, full, but it had not made room, not for the wrap, not for the note. Not for her. She turned the key, the engine hummed to life. And, for the first time that day, the only sound she could hear was her own. The road away from the house was lined with maple trees. Their leaves were just beginning to change small patches of amber at the edges. Still mostly green, still holding on. She drove slowly. Not because she was unsure, but because she didn't want to jolt him. The baby had fallen asleep within. Minutes of being buckled in, the gentle rhythm of the car lulling him deeper with each turn. She glanced in the mirror every few minutes just to be sure. His head tilted slightly to the side, mouth parted, one hand curled near his face. There. Was no one behind her? No headlights? No hurried calls? No tires screeching onto the street? Nothing frantic. Nothing chasing. The neighborhood disappeared quickly, replaced by long stretches of road and houses that stood further apart. Her own street wasn't far. She had lived there for years. Not the same house her son grew up in, that one had been. Sold after the divorce, but a quiet, well-kept place on the edge of town. 2 bedrooms, a garden she still maintained. A sunroom that stayed warm in the winter. A house that had never been too loud. But had never felt empty either. She pulled into the driveway, let the engine idle for a moment, then turned the key and listened to the sudden hush. Her porch light blinked on automatically. She hadn't expected to return this early, but the house didn't know that. It just welcomed her, the way it always did. She opened the car door carefully. The cool air rushed in, the scent of pine from the trees nearby. She stepped out, rounded the car, and opened the back seat. The baby stirred slightly, but didn't wake. She unbuckled him with practiced hands, lifted him against her chest. He didn't cry. His small hand brushed the fabric of her collar. She paused a moment, let the weight of him settle there, felt his breath against her shoulder, and walked. Up the path. Inside the house was dim. She didn't flip on the overhead lights, just the small one in the kitchen. It's the one by the window, the one that made everything feel a little softer. She moved through the space like she had always meant. To bring him there, not because she had planned it, but because the house had long been prepared. The guest room was already clean. The crib, her son's old one, refinished, still stood in the corner. She had painted the walls a pale yellow years ago, just in case. Not out of expectation. Just hope, just set him down carefully. Flashes. Fluttered, then stilled again. She placed one hand on his back, the same way she had when her son was small. Light, steady. Just enough to remind him he wasn't alone. Then she sat in the rocker by the window. It's the same rocker that had lived in 3 houses. It's the same one with a tiny crack in the armrest from when it had been moved too many times, but still held firm. She rocked slowly, listened, not for sirens, not for knocks, but for breath. The kind that tells you the world is still turning. Even if no one is watching. No one had called yet. No messages. No notifications. She glanced at her phone, still tucked in. Her purse. The screen was dark. She could have felt fear. She could have felt guilt. But what she felt most was something quieter. The kind of quiet that wraps self around a child and says, "You are safe now. Just rest." And so she did. She rested too. Not because it was over, but because something had just begun. The clock above the stove blinked 6:42. The evening had settled in. The kind of stillness that made everything in the house feel softer, more honest. Outside, the porch light cast a faint yellow glow across the front steps. No cars had driven past in the last hour. No doors had knocked. The neighborhood was calm, unaware, or simply uninterested. Either way, the quiet held. She stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing a bottle from a set she'd kept for years. Not because she thought she'd need them again, but because some things, once used with love, are difficult to throw away. The baby had stirred once after the drive, barely fussed, then fallen back asleep after a warm cloth and the weight of her hand on his back. He had slept through the shift of light, through the creak of the floorboards. As if this place, this unfamiliar place, had always been his. She didn't check her phone again. It remained untouched on the entry table. Still no ring, no message. No breath of explanation. She wasn't sure what that meant. They hadn't noticed. Or if they hadn't chose silence instead. The bassinet sat just inside the doorway to the living room. She peeked in. He was still asleep, arms above his head, face relaxed. The way babies sleep when they haven't yet learned to fear absence. When their trust is instinct, not something taught. She hadn't brought much with her. No diaper bag, no change of clothes. Formula. She had taken only him. And yet, somehow, everything he needed was already here. The cupboard still held the soft flannel cloths she used to keep by the changing table. The bottom drawer in the hallway had a few tiny onesies folded from years past. She had washed them again that afternoon, not out of need, just out of rhythm. She moved quietly now, preparing a small bottle of warm water. She wasn't sure how long he would sleep. She just wanted to be ready when he woke. Her hands moved without, thought measured, careful, not trembling, not rushed. Everything she did as if this were normal, as if she were simply watching him for the weekend, as if this was just another version of the many times she had stepped in to help. Not as someone taking something, but as someone returning something to steadiness. The baby stirred. She moved to the doorway. Not urgent, present. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the dim room. No cries. Just the soft intake of breath and a half-turn of his head, seeking a familiar shape. She lifted him gently, held him close. "You're all right," she whispered, barely audible even to herself. He settled again, head tucked against her neck. She sat back in the rocker. No need for music. No need for lights. It's just her heartbeat and the soft creak of old wood against the floor. The phone buzzed once on the table. She didn't move to check it. If it was them, they'd call again. If it wasn't, it didn't matter. The child was warm against her chest. The room was safe, and for the first time in a very long while. She wasn't waiting for permission to hold what was already hers. The buzz of the phone came again, this time twice in a row. Still, she didn't move. The baby had drifted back into sleep, his breath steady against the soft fabric of her shoulder. The room had gone quiet in that way only late evenings. Doing nothing demands attention, and even the house itself seems to exhale. She rocked gently, her feet brushing the worn edge of the rug with every pass. The screen lit the corner of the entry table in brief flashes. No ringtone. Just the silent insistence of someone trying to be heard without voice. She didn't need to see who it was. There were only two people it could be. And either way, she wasn't ready. It's not yet. Outside. The porch light buzzed faintly. A moth tapped softly against the glass. She watched its wings flicker, battering itself gently in search of something that had once guided it. She stood slowly, careful, not to wake him, and walked toward the hallway. The crib was ready, the sheets smoothed. A small mobile hung overhead, wooden. Stars unpainted. Her hands moved with precision as she laid him down. He didn't stir. One hand remained curled near his chin, the same way her son used to sleep when he was small. She lingered a moment, brushing a loose thread from the edge of the blanket, then turned back toward the front of the house. The phone had stopped buzzing. She reached for it now, unlocked the screen. 5 missed calls. 1 from her son, 4 from an unknown number she didn't need. Help identifying. No messages. No voicemails. Not yet. She set the phone down again. The baby's things weren't here. No diaper bag. No formula. No pacifiers. And yet the house didn't feel like it was lacking. The drawers still held enough. She knew which grocery stores stayed open late, knew where the spare blankets were folded, knew the weight of midnight feedings even. Her body hadn't done them in years. She had not taken him out of revenge. She hadn't moved in defiance. She had simply seen him, left alone, draped in laughter that didn't reach him, surrounded by people who thought parenting was registry depend, chosen not to leave him there. She walked into the kitchen and poured water into a small pot. Turned the burner on low. There would be feedings tonight. Diaper changes. She'd have to go out in the morning, get what was needed, maybe leave a note, maybe not. Her son hadn't called back. Not yet. No knock at the door. No headlights in the driveway. The pot began to steam. She measured formula into a clean bottle, the way she had done years ago. Muscle memory slipping quietly back into her hands. She didn't feel heroic. She didn't feel like a thief. She felt like a mother. The kind that showed up long after the party ended. The kind that understood real love didn't always come wrapped in bows and registry links. The phone buzzed again. This time, a text. 3 words. Where is he? She didn't reply. Instead, she held the bottle under warm water, tested the temperature on her wrist, swirled it gently. The reply could wait. The baby couldn't. The knock didn't come until after midnight. Not loud, not panicked. It's just firm. Twice. Then a pause. Then again, she stood in the hallway, barefoot, bottle still warm in one hand. The baby rested against her chest, freshly changed, drifting back into sleep after the slow feeding. His breath was steady. He didn't notice. The knock dot, she didn't answer the door right away. She didn't need to look through the peephole to know who it was. The knock was too certain to be a stranger, too restrained to be police. Another knock, same rhythm. She stepped toward the entry, still holding the baby, her body a barrier. House smelled of powder and lavender. The hallway light cast a narrow glow across the floor. The front window revealed only the shape of a person. No movement, no yelling, just presence. She opened the door. Daughter's son stood on the porch. No jacket, just a wrinkled shirt, sleeves pushed up to his elbows. His face was drawn, not angry, tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from missed sleep, but the kind that comes when a story has slipped out of your hands. He didn't speak at first, just looked down at her. Then at the baby, then back at her. Her arms didn't shift. The baby stayed tucked close. "I didn't know you were leaving," he said quietly. She looked at him, her eyes steady. "I didn't know I was either." He nodded once, a short breath. No protest. "She's been calling hospitals." "I didn't. Go to a hospital, I know." He leaned against the doorframe, hands in his pockets now. The porch light made his face look older than she remembered. There were creases at his brow he hadn't had last year. Maybe not even last month. "She thinks you stole him," he said after a pause. "I didn't. I know that too." Baby stirred slightly. She adjusted him, not breaking eye contact. She left him alone. She added, not bitter, just factual, while they passed around party games. She thought someone else was watching him. She didn't ask. He nodded again, looked past her now, into the dim living room. The edge of the rocker. The kitchen lights still on. She's scared. She didn't look scared. She was embarrassed. Her voice was quieter now. She laughed at the gift. He looked down at his shoes, said nothing. "I didn't come to make a scene," she said. "I just couldn't stand there anymore." Watching him be treated like a centerpiece, I know. The silence held between them. Not heavy, just long. Then, softer, he asked, "Can I come in?" She looked at him, really looked, not the child. He had been not the man she'd tried to keep steady through broken holidays and missed calls. Just someone standing on her porch, unsure if he still had a place. "You can," she said, "but take your shoes off." He did. She stepped aside. The door closed behind them. He followed her into the quiet. The house still warm, child still, sleeping dot. And though neither said it, something shifted back into place, not because it was fixed, but because it had been carried long enough. He stood just inside the doorway for a moment, as if uncertain whether to move further without permission. His shoes sat neatly beside the door now, just as they had when he was small. She walked ahead without waiting, her steps quiet on the floorboards, the baby still sleeping against her chest. The hallway stretched out before them, unchanged from the last time he had visited. Same photos, same frames, same small scuff mark near the baseboard, where he'd once dragged his toy truck too hard against the wall. He followed her to the kitchen. The air was warmer here, the smell of warmed formula still lingering faintly. She eased into the rocker in the corner, near the window, and adjusted the baby gently, letting him settle deeper. Her son stood a few feet away, leaning slightly against the counter, his hands folded in front of him. He didn't speak for a while, neither did she. He looked at the bottle on the counter, half full, carefully capped. Then at the clean cloth folded beside the sink. The wrap that had caused all of this still lay draped across the back of the chair. He recognized it now. Not just as a gift, but as something older, familiar. "I remember that," he said finally, nodding toward the cloth. "You used to wrap me in it." She didn't nod. She didn't have to. "It was in the cedar chest," he added. "It still is," she said. "I only took it out this week to air it. I thought maybe someone would appreciate the history." She didn't mean to be cruel. She just didn't try not to be. He rubbed his thumb along the inside of his palm. An old habit, a nervous one. He hadn't done it in years. She thought it looked homemade. "It was so as everything you wore for the first year of your life." He exhaled slowly. No defense. No argument. "I didn't see it," he said. "At the shower. I was in the kitchen for most of the gifts. I thought you left because of the crowd." "I left because no one noticed I was there." His eyes dropped to the floor. "I should have come to find you." She rocked gently. The baby stirred and let out a small sound. She hushed him without speaking. "You shouldn't have had to," she said after a moment. "I didn't think. I know you didn't," she said. "That's what hurt." He crossed his arms now, not defensive, just folded into himself. "Did you mean to take him?" he asked quietly. She looked down at the child in her arms. "I meant to hold him," she said. For once, without asking, he watched her rock a little more. The silence stretched again. Softer this time. "She's scared you won't bring him back," he said. "She should be more scared of why I had to take him in the first place." He didn't argue. The clock ticked on the wall. Truck passed distantly down the street. The porch light hummed faintly against the windows. "I'm not keeping him," she said finally. "I know. I just needed a moment that was mine." He nodded slowly. "You've always been the one who showed up." She looked at him now. Really looked. "You're his father. You get to decide who shows up for him now." He met her gaze, and something in his face changed. Less like the boy she'd raised. More like the man she'd hoped he'd become. "I want you to be part of his life," he said. "I never left it," she replied. This time, the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was recognition. The baby slept for another hour. Neither of them spoke much during that time. Her son stayed seated at the kitchen table, tracing the edge of a coaster with his thumb. She remained in the rocker, gently swaying, the baby's cheek pressed to her shoulder, his breath slow and even. The house held them both in a quiet that felt less like tension now, and more like a space where truth had finally found somewhere to sit down. The bottle on the counter had cooled. The lamp by the fridge was the only light still on. Outside, the wind had picked up slightly, nudging the edge of the garden hose and rattling the porch swing just once. When the baby finally stirred again, it was only a little, a soft sound, a stretch, a slow blink against the dim light. She adjusted her grip and stood, her back careful but steady. He didn't cry, just watched her with half-closed eyes, fingers moving lazily in the air. Her son stood too, unsure at first, then quietly stepping closer. He didn't reach for the baby immediately. He paused beside her instead, his gaze fixed on the child's face. The baby turned toward him instinctively, sensing the shape of another presence. "He looks like you did," she said, not as sentiment, just as fact. He smiled faintly, then slowly lifted his hands. She let him take the baby without question. The movement was smooth, practiced, even if it had been rare. The child adjusted quickly in his father's arms. Settling against his chest without protest, "I forgot how small they are," he murmured. She nodded. "They always feel smaller when you finally hold them the right way." He cradled his son now, one hand supporting his back, the other curled lightly around his leg. For a long moment, he didn't look at anyone but the child. No performance. No posing. Just stillness. She stepped toward the sink, rinsed the cooled bottle, set it in the rack without sound. "I wasn't trying to take him from you," she said. "I know. I just couldn't leave him in a room full of people who thought parenting was about pictures." He turned toward her slightly, not defensive. "She's learning. She has time." He looked down at his son again. The baby's eyes were closed now, mouth open slightly in sleep. "I never thought I'd be the kind of father who needed help." "No one thinks they are," she said, "till the silence gets louder than the noise." He shifted slightly, adjusting the baby with more ease this time. "You always made it look easy," he said. "It wasn't. I know that now." Walked to the hallway and opened the door to the second bedroom. The crib stood ready, soft sheets. A folded blanket at the end. The lamp glowed dimly in the corner. He followed her in and lowered the baby gently, careful not to wake him. The child stirred but didn't cry, just sighed into the pillow. Arms still above his head, her son stepped back and looked at the room. "I didn't even know you still had this crib. I never got rid of it." He nodded. "I didn't know what I was doing when I came here tonight." He said, "You didn't have to." They stood quietly for a while longer, both watching the baby sleep. Then he whispered more to himself than to her. "I think he knows who you are." She smiled faintly, not with pride, but with something steadier. "He will," she said. And for the first time that night, it felt like something had truly returned, not taken. Not rescued, just found again. He didn't leave that night, not because he said he wouldn't, not because they made a plan, but because something unspoken kept him there. The hours passed gently, with no tension, no raised voices, no sudden movements. Just the sounds of a child sleeping and two adults rediscovering the language of stillness. He took the couch without. Being asked, she offered blankets. He accepted. The way they used to navigate things wordlessly functioned first. Later, as she passed by the living room with a warm glass of water, she saw that he had already dozed off, one arm flung over his forehead. Shoes still off, face softened by sleep. She paused for a moment, watching, not with judgment, not even emotion, just memory. This was the boy who used to fall asleep on car rides, legs too long for the back seat but refusing the front. The boy who once cried into her coat after his first disappointment at school. And now here he was, a father, dozing under her roof. Carrying the shape of exhaustion only new parents understand. She didn't wake him. Instead, she walked back to the hallway, stopping at the door to the baby's room. The crib was barely visible. In the moonlight through the blinds, she didn't turn the lamp on, just listened. The hush of sleep. The small clicks of breath. A faint rustle as the baby shifted and stilled. Her hand rested lightly on the edge of the doorframe. The house hadn't felt this full in years, but not in a noisy way. In a way that brought back the quiet parts, surly mornings, whispered lullabies. Footsteps that avoided creaks. She returned to her own room and lay down without undressing. The blanket folded across her knees. The light from the hallway spilling faintly through the open door. She didn't sleep for a while. Her eyes stayed open, but her body softened. She wasn't alert in the way people are when they expect trouble. Just aware, listening, present. It was past 3 a.m. when she finally let herself close her eyes, and when she opened them again. The sun was beginning to rise. The house was still quiet. But it was a different kind of quiet now. Not lonely. Not uncertain. She rose, made her way to the kitchen. Started the kettle, knowing he'd need coffee. Knowing he liked it strong, no sugar, splash of cream. She set 2 mugs on the counter. Took out the bread for toast. Moved through the kitchen with practiced steps as the kettle began to hiss. She heard him stir. He came in slowly, rubbing his eyes, hair rumpled. She handed him the mug without a word. "Thanks," he said, voice hoarse. She nodded. They stood in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the soft clink of the spoon in her mug and the pop of the toaster. Then he said, "She texted me at 4. She wants to know if he's okay. He's more than okay. I told her I'd bring him back this morning. She didn't react. Just buttered a piece of toast slowly, the way she always had his first. She said she doesn't want to talk to you. That's fine. She said she thinks you overreacted." She looked at him then, not hard, just directly. "And what do you think?" He didn't answer right away. "Then I think I didn't see what I should have seen. And you did." She placed a second slice of toast on a plate, pushed it toward him. "We can leave after breakfast," she said. He nodded. They didn't speak about it further, because some things, when broken, don't need an argument. They just need someone to stay awake long enough to carry what others. The baby woke just as they finished their toast. Not with a cry, just a small rustle from the back room. A soft sound that drifted into the kitchen like a thread tugging gently at their attention. She rose without urgency, her son close behind. The hallway was warmed now by the rising sun, casting thin stripes of gold through the blinds, the kind of morning light that made the floorboards seem more familiar, more lived in. She opened the door quietly. The baby lay awake, eyes blinking up at the ceiling. One hand was pressed against the crib rail, the other curled loosely near his cheek. When he saw her, he didn't cry. He just stared, calm, expectant, as if he had been waiting for her specifically. She lifted him, slow and practiced, supporting the base of his neck as she had so many times before with another child. His body relaxed into her arms. She pressed her cheek lightly to his forehead behind her. Her son stood silently at the door. Watching, she turned slightly, offered the child outward. "You want to dress him?" she asked. He hesitated only for a moment, then stepped forward. They didn't speak as they moved together through the motions. He picked out a clean onesie from the drawer she had stocked. She laid the baby on the changing mat, guiding her son's hands through the steps he fumbled. Diaper tabs, shirt sleeves, socks that kept curling at the toes. It was clumsy, but not careless. He worked with quiet focus, and when it was done, he lifted his son again, not like a fragile thing, but like someone learning weight and balance. All over again. "He smells like powder," he said, amused. "He should," she replied. "I didn't raise you in dryer sheets." He smiled. Brief, real. The car seat was still in the hallway where she had left it the night before. He reached for it, but she touched his arm gently. "I'll carry him out," she said. "You drive." He paused, then nodded that the air outside had warmed since the early hours. The leaves were brighter now, fully gold at the edges. The street was still quiet. No curious neighbors. No police. Just a slow morning with no fanfare. She buckled the baby in with care, adjusted the straps, checked the angle of the seat. Her hands didn't shake. When they pulled out of the driveway, she didn't look back at the house. Not once. 'Cause it wasn't about what she was leaving behind. It was about what she had managed to hold. Just long enough. The ride was silent. Not tense. Just deliberate. She kept one hand resting on the baby's car seat as it rocked slightly with each curve in the road. The house came into view after the turn, a beige two-story. Blinds still drawn. Porch empty. She noticed the blue balloon remnants still tied to the mailbox, a frayed string hanging where something festive had once floated. He parked but didn't get out right away. She unbuckled the baby, lifting him out slowly. "I'll take him in," she said. He looked at her, uncertain. "Are you?" "Sure. I'm not sure of anything, but I should be the one to do it." He nodded. She walked up the front path with the baby in her arms. Not hurried, not hesitant at the door. She didn't knock. She used the spare key he'd once given her, tucked in the planter, still wrapped in foil. Inside, the living room was Dim, party decorations sagged from the ceiling, one paper streamer halfway detached. A few opened gifts still sat unwrapped, their ribbons half unraveled. She heard footsteps upstairs. Then the soft creak of someone descending, the baby's mother, appeared in the hallway. She looked tired, not dressed. Her eyes puffy, her voice absent when she spoke. "You came back." She didn't respond. Just stepped forward, placing the baby gently into the woman's arms. He turned slightly, curling into his mother's chest. They both looked at him, then at each other. Neither woman said a word because, for the first time, words weren't the point. She didn't stay long. Once the baby was in his mother's arms, she stepped back, not abruptly, just enough to signal that her part for now was finished. The younger woman adjusted her grip, unsure, not of the child's weight, but of the moment. Her eyes searched the older woman's face, not in anger, not even in confusion, but something closer to disorientation, as if she had stepped into a scene she hadn't rehearsed for. The baby stirred once and settled. The house stayed quiet. She noticed then that the decorations were still half up. A banner drooped from one corner. The empty punch bowl sat untouched. On the coffee table, wrapping paper littered the floor where no one had bothered to sweep. She looked around, but didn't ask anything. The mother finally spoke. "I didn't think you'd bring him back yourself." She gave a quiet nod. "I didn't think I would either." A long silence followed. Then the younger woman shifted the baby slightly in her arms and said, more carefully this time, "I didn't mean for you to feel like you weren't part of it. You didn't need to mean it for it to be true." The response landed gently. No accusation, just observation. Another pause. The woman across from her blinked slowly, glancing down at the baby and then back up again. "He wasn't in danger," she said. "No," the older woman agreed. "He was just alone." There wasn't defensiveness in the mother's posture anymore, just fatigue. The kind that clings to someone who didn't realize they'd made a mistake until long after the moment had passed. "He's okay?" she asked, quieter now. "Yes. And you fed him?" "Yes." "Did he cry?" "No." She looked relieved by that, though her mouth didn't smile. She simply nodded, as if filing away the facts. Then, after a while, "Was he different with you?" "No, just held. That's all." They stood like that for another minute, still in the same room but worlds apart. One carrying guilt she hadn't expected to feel, the other carrying a silence that had finally been answered. The baby yawned softly. The younger woman looked down and adjusted her grip. When she spoke again, it was softer. "I didn't know that. Rap was yours. I didn't say it was. You should have." "I didn't need to." Another pause. "I'm sorry," she said, "not just for the rap." The older woman nodded. "Don't say it to me. Say it to him. Just show up." That was all. She turned, walked toward the door, and let herself out without ceremony. No need for anything more outside. Her son stood leaning against the car, arms folded, watching the window. He looked at her as she came down the steps. She shook her head once, gently. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to say, "It's done." He opened the car door for her. She got in. Neither of them looked back. They didn't need to. The drive back was quiet again, but not heavy. She sat in the passenger seat with her hands folded in her lap, fingers still holding a faint warmth from earlier. The child's shape lingered in her arms even though he was no longer there. Her son glanced at her once as they merged onto the main road, but he didn't ask what had happened inside. He didn't need to. They passed the same storefronts, the same blinking yellow light at the four-way stop, the same cracked sidewalk outside the school she used to walk him to. Nothing looked different, and yet something had shifted. Not in the street, not in the town, but in the space between them. He pulled into her driveway, easing the car to a soft stop. The porch was still bathed in morning light, its shadows longer now. She didn't reach for the door immediately. She turned to him instead. "You can come in," she said. "You want?" He hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that. They walked inside together, not as visitors, not as strangers, but as people who had finally heard each other. House still smelled faintly of warm bottles and lavender. A faint hum from the old fridge filled the silence. He followed her into the kitchen. She put the kettle back on without asking, and he settled at the table like he had before. The chair still creaked the same way. The spoon still sat beside the sink. I told her to rest, he said after a moment. She won't. I know. Poured 2 mugs, slid one toward him, and leaned against the counter. I didn't want it to happen like that, he added. I didn't want to be invisible. His jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't argue. I think I let her set the tone for everything. I thought that's what it meant to protect someone just. Stay quiet and let them lead. She nodded. Silence isn't protection. It's absence. He looked down at his coffee, stirred it once, though it didn't need stirring. She told me not to call you after the shower. I figured. Should have called anyway. She didn't answer. He looked up. I let her speak for me. And I stopped waiting for either of you to speak at all. The kettle clicked off behind her, though she didn't move to pour more. I think I just wanted to get through the day, he continued. Make it look smooth, polished. She likes things to be performative, and I went along with it. She raised her eyebrows faintly. And the baby? He didn't ask for any of it. She stepped forward, then placed a hand on the back of the chair across from him, not sitting, just standing close. He won't remember any of this, she said. But you will. He nodded. So start over, she added. Not from scratch, from honesty. He didn't respond. Not in words, but his silence didn't feel like absence this time. It felt like listening. She stepped toward the sink again, rinsed her mug, set it down. The morning light was softer, now filtered through the trees. You know, he said quietly, you're the only one who didn't ask me if I was ready to be a father. That's because I knew the answer, and what was it? You weren't, but you are now. He let out a breath that landed somewhere between a sigh and a laugh. Then finally, he stood. I'll be back later, he said. Not just to visit, I know. He picked up his keys, gave her a long look not with regret, but recognition, and stepped out the door. No announcement, no apology, just return. She didn't clean the house right away. The bottles stayed in the drying rack. The folded wrap remained on the back of the chair. The crib in the second room still made up, still waiting. There was no urgency to erase the evidence of what had happened. No need to reset the space. The quiet didn't feel like a void anymore. It felt like breath after being held too long. She walked through each room slowly. Not too tidy. Just 2. See? The guest blanket lay draped over the couch where her son had slept. One of the mugs they'd used was still warm where she had set it back down. Even the hallway carried a different weight, as if something that had stretched thin for years had finally thickened, become visible again. She paused at the window by the kitchen. From there she could see the street. Nothing remarkable passed. Just a jogger, the mail truck, a child on a scooter too small for him. The ordinary felt stable now. Not heavy, not painful. Just what it was. At mid-morning, she stepped outside. The sun was high enough to warm the porch rail. She sat on the steps like she used to, knees bent, hands folded lightly. Across the yard, the flower bed had started to wilt in places, but the marigolds were still holding on. A neighbor waved from across the street. She nodded back. Not everything had to be explained. Inside. The clock ticked steadily. She rose only when she heard the distant hum of a car returning. It wasn't loud, wasn't fast, just steady. Familiar, her son stepped out first. He carried the diaper bag slung over one shoulder. Behind him, the baby's mother stepped carefully from the passenger seat. She didn't carry anything. Her hands were empty, open. They didn't say anything across the yard. Just walked toward the porch, side by side, not touching, but not. Divided. When they reached the steps. The younger woman paused. I wasn't sure I should come, she said. She nodded once. But you did. The woman looked down. Then back up. I think I owe you more than an apology. You don't owe me anything, she replied. You owe him presents. The baby stirred in the carrier as her son lifted it onto the porch. He didn't say anything either, just placed it gently between them and stepped back. He didn't sleep long, he said, almost apologetically. She leaned down, unfastened the buckle, and lifted the baby into her arms once again. I don't need him to sleep, she said. I just need to hold him. The mother watched as she adjusted the baby's blanket, smoothed his hair, rested his head against her chest. I thought I could do it all alone, the young woman said. No one does it alone, she replied. Some just pretend better than others. They stood like that for a while, sun warming the porch, leaves brushing faintly in the wind. Eventually, the mother sat on the top step beside her. Not close, not distant, just present. She passed the baby gently into her arms. This time, no one winced. No one flinched. No one looked away, and for the first time they both held him together. The day stretched on without a schedule. No one asked what time it was. No one mentioned needing to leave. The baby drifted in and out of sleep, passing from one set of arms to another, not hurried, not claimed. Just held. They stayed on the porch longer than expected. Urson had gone. Inside briefly, returning with cold water, then later coffee. The young mother sat quieter now, shoulders less drawn. Every so often she would glance toward the older woman, not with hesitation, but with something more cautious, like someone learning how to share a space they had once tried to own. Inside, the rooms were still as they had been that morning. Nothing staged, nothing put away. The crib remained made. The second mug still sat on the counter, faint rings drying around its base. The air in the house was warm but breathable. It didn't feel full of tension anymore. It felt like it had accepted what it was being asked to carry. In the late afternoon, the older woman stepped back inside with the baby, letting him rest in the crook of her arm as she swayed in the kitchen. She didn't need music. Own rhythm returned, easily, the kind that doesn't require thinking. Just years of muscle memory layered beneath skin and silence. The young mother watched from the doorway. She leaned quietly against the frame, observing but not interrupting. I didn't know how to do any of that, she said finally. The swaying, the holding without fuss. It isn't something you get from books, the older woman replied. I watched videos. I raised a child. That answer didn't sting the way it might have days ago. It landed with clarity, not condescension. I thought love would make it easier, the young mother said. Love makes it heavier. But not easier. She stepped into the kitchen now, slowly. She reached for the baby, but didn't take him yet. Instead, she touched the older woman's arm gently, not to ask permission, just to acknowledge what was being shared. Then she lifted the child from her arms more carefully this time. Spotty adjusted easily, curling into the shape of a familiar chest. He didn't wake. He didn't cry. The older woman watched, eyes steady. You're still holding your shoulders too tight, she said softly. The mother adjusted, loosened, breathed. He settled deeper there. The older woman said. They stood together by the window as the afternoon sun filtered in. No curtain. No distraction. I don't think I've ever had someone correct me without making me feel small. The younger woman whispered, I didn't correct you. I stood beside you. It took a moment for her to understand that. But when she did, her posture shifted. She turned to look at the older woman, eyes full but calm. I don't want to do this without you, she said. The words hung for a moment, uncluttered, direct. You won't have to, the older woman answered, no ceremony, no embrace. Just a shared sentence that sat between them and needed nothing more. Outside, her son watched from the porch steps, not listening, just waiting. His hand rested on the railing, thumb tapping rhythmically. He didn't interrupt. He didn't need. Two inside that kitchen, two women stood side by side, a baby between them. Something else passed just then, something they wouldn't name. But neither of them would let go. She didn't ask them to stay for dinner, but they didn't leave. Instead, the afternoon stretched naturally into evening. The baby napped again, this time laid gently in the crib in the back room. No protest, no fuss. As if the house had become familiar enough to rest in. As if he too felt the shift in the air. Her son took the trash out without being asked. The young mother rinsed dishes that weren't hers. Small acts, unannounced. Not done for thanks. It's done because something had begun to repair. In movements rather than words, the kitchen smelled like garlic and soft onions by 5. She moved through. The preparation like she always had, quiet hands, steady pace. Her son set the table. 3 plates, evenly spaced. No high chair yet, but he brought the baby's soft wrap and laid it across one of the chairs like a placeholder. The young mother watched her, unsure whether to sit or offer help. Eventually, she took a seat at the table and folded her hands, resting her palms against the edge of the wood. "This isn't what I thought it would look like," she said softly. "What?" "Parenthood, family, all of it." The older woman stirred the pot once. Then again, it never is. She turned slightly. "But you still stayed, even when it wasn't what you expected." She met her eyes. "That's the part that matters." The food was ready before they realized they were hungry. She served each plate without fanfare, no garnish, no plated flourish. Just something warm and enough. They ate slowly, not out of politeness, but because the silence at the table felt full. Now, not awkward. The kind of silence that allowed for thought, for noticing, for breath. Her son spoke first, halfway through his plate. He smiled today. They looked up while I was buckling him into the seat. He added, "Just for a second." And then he blinked like it surprised him. The mother smiled faintly. He does that sometimes, like he's just realized something important. The older woman looked at them both. He did. The table grew quiet again, but not tense. When they finished, the young woman stood up and reached for the plates. The older woman led her. Son began clearing the glasses by the time the baby woke. The kitchen was clean and the dishes were drying in the rack. She returned to the back room and lifted him easily. He was more alert now, eyes wide, scanning. She carried him out to the living room where the others had settled into the evening rhythm. Lights dimmed, shoes off, the sound of distant crickets through the cracked window. She handed the baby to his mother, who took him with more certainty now. The blanket held firm. Her arms didn't shake. The older woman sat nearby, not hovering, just near. They didn't speak much after that. The baby cooed once, then rested his cheek against her collarbone. His small fingers tangled in the fabric of her shirt, and for the first time, no one moved to correct him. No one rushed to shift or adjust. They simply let him be. The room held its breath. No one said what had changed, but everyone felt it. She had folded the wrap one final time and placed it on the arm of the couch. Not tucked away, not hidden, just there. Its presence didn't demand anything, but it didn't need to be explained either. The mother had seen her do it. Watched closely, as if noticing the way the fabric held shape even after being worn. They didn't talk about the baby shower anymore, not directly, not even through side comments or half phrases. The memory of it remained, but its sharpness had dulled, softened under newer moments that now occupied the same space. Like the quiet exchange of spoons over coffee, or the way they now handed the baby back and forth without hesitation. That morning she noticed a pair of tiny socks on the floor. One blue, one gray, mismatched but clean. She picked them up and set them neatly by the edge of the crib where the baby slept soundly. It was a quiet detail, but it stayed with her. Her son had returned the next day without calling first. Just knocked, then let himself in. He looked less tired, carried the baby in one arm while juggling a small bag in the other. She had a class, he explained. A class. Postnatal therapy. Group session. She go willingly? No, but she stayed the whole hour. She nodded once, said nothing more. The baby reached for her. She took him gently. Each visit after that came without announcement. Sometimes they stayed for an hour, sometimes longer. The mother would help fold towels. Her son would fix the back fence. The baby always found a place between them, cradled, sung to, or simply watched as he slept. There were no more I should go comments, no glancing at phones, no pretending to rush. One afternoon, the mother lingered by the door before leaving. I never asked, she said, why you brought the gift in the first place. The older woman paused. She was drying a dish. She placed it down slowly. It wasn't a gift, she said. It was a piece of what I had left. From my mother, from yours. The mother's eyes dropped slightly. It looked old. It is. Did you make it? No. But I mended it twice. The younger woman nodded. A quiet understanding began to form. I didn't know it mattered. That only mattered because you didn't ask. No bitterness in her tone. Just clarity. The next time they came over, the wrap wasn't on the couch anymore. It was in use, slung over the mother's shoulder. The baby nestled inside, asleep, his breathing slow and even. When she saw her, the older woman didn't say anything. She just adjusted the end of the wrap folding at once so it didn't rub against the baby's cheek. The mother led her that evening. As they were leaving, the young woman turned in the doorway. He looks for you, she said softly. The older woman tilted her head. When he wakes up, I think he expects to see you. She nodded once, calm. That means he feels safe. They stood there for a second longer. Then the mother added, so do I. Nothing more was said. They left quietly, and she closed the door behind them. The house didn't feel empty. It felt ready. Rain came that nightlight at first, then steady. The kind of rain that clung to window panes and muted the sounds of everything else. She sat near the back window with a book in her lap, though she hadn't turned a page in over an hour. The house was dim, warm. The rhythm of the water outside slowed everything, even her thoughts. She thought of the baby. Not with longing or worry, just as a quiet presence in her mind. As familiar now as the sound of the kettle or the way the floor creaked near the hallway. The phone buzzed once on the counter. A message from her son. Still up, she answered simply. Yes. A few minutes later, headlights lit the front of the house. Not rushed, just arrived. She opened the door before they could knock. He stood there with the baby in his arms and the mother. Behind him, hood pulled low against the drizzle. He won't sleep, her son said. He's been fussy, the mother added. We tried everything. She stepped aside without a word and let them in. Inside, they unwrapped the baby, now wide-eyed and restless. He squirmed in his blanket, not crying, but unsettled in a way they hadn't seen before. She took him gently and held him close. No bouncing, no talking, just stillness. It was the kind of calm only years could teach. After a while, he stopped wriggling. His eyes blinked slower, then slower again, till they closed entirely. His body softened against her, and his small breath warmed the crook of her neck. He hasn't done that all week, the mother whispered. The older woman didn't answer, just kept holding him. Her son sat on the edge of the couch, watching. The young woman remained by the door, unsure whether to sit or stay standing. Eventually, she lowered herself to the floor near the older woman's feet. He's changing. So fast, the mother said softly. I'm scared I'll miss the moments that matter. You already have, the older woman replied. We all do. But you keep showing up anyway. The baby stirred once, but didn't wake. I was afraid you'd never forgive me. The young woman said, I didn't need to forgive you, she replied. I just needed you to see me. There was a long silence after that, the kind that didn't press for more. Rain kept falling outside. The young mother leaned her head against the older woman's knee. Eyes closed, just listening to the breath of the sleeping child above her. Her son said nothing, but his eyes were full. Later, she rose, handed the baby to his mother without fuss. He didn't wake, just shifted in her arms. They didn't leave immediately. They lingered near the door. Not because they didn't know what to say, but because they finally didn't have to. The mother turned before stepping out. "Next time," she said, "you don't wait for us. Just come." And this time the invitation didn't need to be written down that next time she came, no one was home yet. She let herself in with the key he'd given her 2 weeks before. A quiet gesture handed over in the parking lot of the grocery store, tucked inside an envelope with no note. He hadn't said anything when he gave it to Herge, just nodded once. She'd taken it with a soft, wordless agreement. Now the house held its afternoon silence. A baby sock lay beside the sofa, a rattle half tucked under a folded towel, the smell of milk still faint in the air. She didn't rush to tidy. She walked through the rooms slowly, noticing how lived in everything had become. The crib had moved from the guest room into the main bedroom. She saw it through the door, pushed gently against the wall, a mobile swaying above it from a half-opened window. The curtain billowed slightly. Sheets were clean. She sat in the kitchen and waited, not out of impatience but presence. When the door finally opened, 'twas the mother who stepped in first, hair pulled back, jacket damp from an earlier mist. The baby was asleep in the carrier on her chest. She didn't look surprised to see the older woman. "You came," she said. "You said too," the young woman nodded. She unbuckled the baby and moved slowly, carefully, as though not wanting to disturb the peace already in the room. She handed the baby over with quiet ease. "He had a rough morning," she added, "didn't want to be set down." She took him and sat with him in the living room. The blanket was already draped over the chair. She adjusted him into it as if the space had been waiting. "He'll settle," she said simply. The young woman sat across from her, one leg tucked under the other. "There's a meeting next week," she said. "Mothers with complicated relationships. I thought about going. Will you?" "I don't know. Part of me thinks I don't need it anymore. And the other part thinks I might still need to explain myself. Out loud." The older woman nodded. "Sometimes saying it helps. Sometimes living it is louder." The baby shifted and sighed. They sat like that a long while. Later, her son came through the back door, keys in one hand, grocery bag in the other. He froze for a moment. When he saw them, then he smiled. Small, tired, real Dot. He placed the bag on the counter and leaned down to kiss his son's head. "He's calm," he said. "He's listening." The older woman replied. He sat on the armrest near his partner. She reached for his hand without looking. Dinner that night was informal. They didn't sit at the table. Instead, they gathered on the floor, passing bowls and spoons, eating in turns. The baby slept soundly in the wrap nearby, one tiny hand resting against the soft fabric. No one led the conversation, but it never stopped. They spoke about small things, grocery brands, diaper sizes. The baby's new laugh, how it sounded almost like a hiccup. How his eyes now followed voices across the room, and between the words something else settled. Familiarity, not forced, not structured, just belonging. The older woman didn't say it out loud, but she felt it. Not that she was being let in, but that the door had been open for a while. They just hadn't known how to ask her to walk through it. Now, she was already inside. The baby was nearly sitting up on his own now. It wasn't graceful, yet more of a wobbly lean that occasionally ended in a slow topple butt. He was trying. Every few minutes his hands would press against the floor, his head bobbing forward as if negotiating with gravity. They watched him from the couch, his mother, his father, the woman who had once only been given a visitor's badge. No one reached to correct him. No one guided his hands. They let him try. And when he fell back with a soft thump against the folded quilt, he didn't cry. He blinked, startled, and tried again. The older woman smiled faintly. "He's stubborn." Her son nodded. "I wonder where he gets that from?" She glanced at him, unimpressed. The mother laughed. "From both sides. It'd become common now these evenings together. No set schedule, no calls to confirm. It's just knowing who would show up and when. Sometimes, she came with food already cooked. Other times she simply brought an extra pair of arms. They had begun calling the wrap hers, even though it now lived permanently in their living room. Slung over the side of the bassinet, on the table sat a framed photoresent. The baby asleep on her chest, her head tilted down toward his, with eyes closed. It hadn't been posed. Her son had taken it without her knowing, and they gave it to her. She hadn't said much. Just held it for a long time before placing it beside the lamp where it stayed. That night, while the baby slept, the mother handed her a folded piece of paper. "We filled out the emergency contact forms," she said quietly. "Daycare, doctor, all of it." The older woman opened the paper slowly. Her name was listed second, right after his mother. She looked up. "You didn't have to. We needed to," the young woman said. "We should have done it a long time ago. No ceremony, no speeches. Just correction made gently." The baby stirred once, but settled again later. As the clock edged toward 10, the older woman reached for her coat. "You don't have to go." Her son said, "You both need sleep." She replied, "I'll walk." "You to the car," he said, already grabbing his keys. Outside, the air was cool. The grass was damp. They walked slowly down the drive, not speaking until they reached the car. He paused there. "I don't think I ever really knew how much I needed you," he said. "You didn't need to know," she answered. "You just needed to come back." He looked down, then back up. "I'm sorry for the way it started." She opened the car door. "I'm not," she said simply. He blinked, unsure. "It brought me here," she added to him. To her, to all of it. She got in, started the engine. He stepped back, hands in his pockets, watching. And as she drove away, she saw him still standing there in the mirror, still watching. Not because he needed to, but because he wanted to. And that was enough. The baby's first birthday came quietly. No big party. No decorations covering the walls. No themed cake or rented chairs. Just a small table, 3 chairs, and a single candle waiting to be lit. The mother had baked the cake herself. It wasn't perfect, one side slightly uneven, the frosting. Little too thick in places, but it smelled like vanilla and felt like effort. Real effort. Not for photos, not for show. For him. She arrived with a gift in a paper bag. Nothing wrapped. Just folded neatly inside something that had waited long enough. The baby's old wrap, now cleaned, restitched, and resized into something new. A soft little quilt. Padded and edged, with initials sewn in the corner by hand. The young mother took it from her, gently unfolding it across her lap. She traced the stitching with one finger. "It's quiet for a long moment. He's going to keep this," she said. "It's meant to be kept." Her son lit the candle. The baby stared at it without, blinking, mesmerized by the flame. They didn't sing. No one clapped. They just leaned in as he leaned forward, his breath puffing once. Then again until the small light went out. The smoke curled upward. No one moved. Then the mother handed him a piece of cake. Just a finger-sized bit. He squished it between his hands, unsure what to do. Then slowly, curiously, brought it to his mouth. They all laughed. The kind of laugh that doesn't rise loud, but warms the room just the same. Later. As the baby napped in the bedroom, the 3 of them sat quietly at the table, coffee cups in hand. The small quilt folded neatly beside them. "I don't think I could have done this without you," the mother said. The older woman didn't answer right away. She took a sip of coffee, then looked up. "You could have," she said. "But he would have known something was missing. That landed differently than anything else had." The young woman looked down at her hands, nodded once. "I think I understand that now." The clock ticked in the background. No one reached for their phones. "I want you there," the mother said. "At what?" "When he starts school, when he falls, when he wins something small and wants someone to notice." The older woman didn't smile. She just held the young woman's gaze. "You'll be tired," she added. "You'll wonder if you're still needed." "I won't wonder." A long silence stretched between them, a peaceful one. And then her son spoke softly. "You didn't just help raise him, you helped raise us." No one cried. But they didn't need to. The baby stirred in the other room, the sound of sheets rustling faintly. The mother stood, walked down the hall, and returned with him resting against her shoulder, heavier now, taller, his head tucked under her chin. He reached out one arm, sleep-drunk, toward the older woman. She took him gently. His eyes opened halfway, then closed again. And in that moment, they sat together, no roles, no rank. It's just three adults and one small boy who would never remember his first year, but would carry the shape of its love for the rest of his life. And that was the gift. It's the only one that mattered.